Okay, this is a follow-on or somewhat related to the other video that I just did. Um, I didn't talk about the red shirt. It's like Soviet red, because Trump is following a communist model, so we say, in his industrial policy. He is screwing the rich. The stock market drops this much, the rich are screwed. So yeah, internationally, the poor will be better off because Americans won't be getting all of the consumer benefits. We American consumers were getting too much more than they give, and by Trump's metrics, that's not fair. He doesn't realize that consumers are getting things cheaper. Maybe he does, at the expense of workers. So there are better ways to do it, like employee ownership, um, with employee owners running their trade policy by having foreign subsidiaries or a supply chain, um, that is where the foreign workers have as much power in the as shareholders, or voting shareholders, I should say, and have the same level of standard of living as far as material goods. Um, that's the way to develop the world, um, through through private commerce, essentially. Tariff, but he's doing it through tariffs now. So unconsciously, maybe, consciously, maybe. You know, if he was trying to help foreign workers as opposed to foreign business holders, he has found the way. But that's the second part of it. Really, I want to talk about the Reds, the Soviets. So, and how population figures are fudged in China and what's essentially the Soviet Union. I mean, it's still run by the KGB and the people connected to the intelligence services. It was under Brezhnev and Stalin, mostly Brezhnev and the people following the technocrats. Khrushchev a little bit. He was a true believer in socialism. Brezhnev and everything after him, from Yeltsin to Putin, or Brezhnev to Putin, it's the same. It's the same level of the privileged getting the privileges, and the people who are the connected getting the privileges. That's what happens in the Russian Federation. That's what happened in the Soviet Union. If you're in with the leader, this is true in China too. If you're in with the leader in the party, if you're loyal to the party, if you're loyal to the oligarch, and the oligarchs he lets live, frankly, then you live well. You use consumption, or the ability to consumer products to like the United States neoliberals, to keep power, to make sure people have stuff. So, our policy is very, is we do state sponsored socialism not as well, but and we have better infrastructure. Here's the thing about our infrastructure, though. People talk about the Soviets as back and the Chinese as backward, or the Russian Federation is backward. Their cities have infrastructure. The problem is, one, that there's not as many people as they claim. Population statistics are inaccurate in socialist countries. They don't really do the kind of census we do. So, it's a political tool to say, I got this many people. They don't. Chinese doesn't have nearly the population. It's less than India now, but India has the people. China doesn't. Neither do the Russians. They're a lot smaller than they think. For a small country, I mean, Petrograd and Moscow, yeah, they got the people in the western of Russia, on the European side of the Urals. You know, it's pretty accurate, I think, or less inaccurate. Siberia and related oblasts. It's Alaska. We don't talk about the U.S. having bad infrastructure in Alaska. Siberia is exactly the same. The mass of Russia, Eastern Russia, from the Urals out, is Alaska. You could make, you could, especially if you were to allow economic independence, you could make from the Urals to Greenland one country, and it wouldn't have a lot of people in it. Alaska, northern Canada, Yakutsk, Siberia, other parts of Siberia, not a lot of folks. If you have an honest census, so I mean, you could have an Inuit and Mongolian, same thing kind of, area, especially if the ethnic Russians leave. And that's the key, to have the ethnic Russians go back to the other side of the Urals, frankly. Then you would have this huge area of, in the south, more Muslims, and some of that territory needs to be ceded downward. The Uzbeks and the Tajiks need to be really added to Greater Persia, to especially the Tajiks, who speak essentially, their language is essentially Farsi. It's mutually understandable. So I think Uzbekistan is probably the same way. There's huge swaths of people who would be better off as because they're Muslim too. A lot of them are Muslims. So let the Muslims have their people back. Get them, rescue their part of the country from the Russians, essentially. So, Russia should be the Moscow Rus, need to have a tighter area of their population, and maybe then they'll and then they have the infrastructure and all that. Alaska doesn't have infrastructure. Eastern Russia doesn't have infrastructure because it doesn't need infrastructure. It has oil pipelines. Alaska has oil pipelines, okay? They don't have, and they're going to have more northern ports. And, so is, with warming, so does the oil section of Western Russia. Again, I'm wearing red, but, which is no accident. I didn't plan on doing a Russia's Not So Bad video but it's, Eastern Russia's not so bad because there's nobody there. The people in the south aren't really ethnically Russian. The people in the north who are like guaranteeing security against the Khanate, leave. Let the people who were in the Khanate, the Mongolians, the Yakutsk, and most of Siberia, let them have their land back, essentially. Undo Russian imperialism, which was an easy do because with modern weapons, let them, wipe out the Khanate. But, the Khanate didn't need to be wiped out. They should have let it be. So it's an extraction area, and a good area for for less advanced cultures. People who like the cold and can deal with it, and they now like Western technology, and that's fine. Give them they have it. Give them, make sure they have the liquidity, that they're not give them should have the Alaskan economy, and Alaska needs to have a more equal economy where people get a better standard of living than they have now, and some kind of technology to make sure they have the greenhouse economy that you have in in the Netherlands. The Netherlands makes a lot of food in a greenhouse economy that could be duplicated in Eastern Russia and northern North America, from Greenland to the Urals. You know, if you have somebody really making hothouse food and artificial meat, that grown meat, we have the technology now to make sure everybody can be fed economically, so that the prices in these areas go down for food. That's, maximum automation. You could make that area with not a lot of people, make those consumers whole at lower prices, or prices that, that they have the stuff. So, Russia's empty because nobody's has bad infrastructure, because there's nobody there, like Alaska, like the Northwest Territories, like Greenland, like Natuk, or however it's pronounced. Yeah, let the Inuits and the Mongolians, which are essentially an ethnic group, together. If you've heard throat singing by the Hugh Band and Native American throat singing, the tone's the same because they're the same people and the music's similar. Let these people unite, make sure they can grow their own food and have their own industry, technologically, and we're getting that technology, and it's a net win. Let them have the extraction income, keep it local, or keep it enough, keep it adequate, and it's a better mix, and we're going to get to that mix because Putin's going to collapse. So the question is are they going to make sure that Eastern Russia has adequate resources? That's a job for industry. Malthus was an idiot. We grow food. A lot of the food we have is in the Netherlands. So frankly, if the industrial policy has the Netherlands be cheaper tariffs, as long as the food grown in Holland in the greenhouses, sorry, the Netherlands for calling you Holland, as long as that food has a low tariff, the world does not suffer, unless they like grain. But grain is bad for humans. So, the more we can get grain out of our diet and replace it with fresh fruit grown in hothouses and meat grown in vats, or whatever they call the artificial meat. Vats is a good word. Then, you've succeeded in making sure the people in geographically poor and environmentally poor areas have adequate access to goods and services. So, because people who like the cold, they'll live there. And then the people who don't like the cold, they can leave. So, it's still, eventually it'll all work itself out. The question is, will we blow ourselves up in the short term? So, the stupid war that Putin has got himself into has ruined his country, but sometimes things need to die before they're reborn. That's the cycle of life. So, yeah. Things, again, with the collapse of neoliberalism, might just work out. Everything works out eventually. It's in a planet with God's will, which I believe in. Whether it's the will of progress in the universe, or the will and us knowing more about it so we can more easily do things with it, or an actual spiritual beneficent God, things get better. So, just if we don't blow ourselves up the Russians' nukes don't exist, so we won't blow ourselves up. It's not going to happen. So, progress is coming. Have a good week.